Sir, what you seen there?
I don't know. I didn't see him. He came out of nowhere. It's like I was hit by a ghost.
Oh, it's not right. It's not right, man. You gotta Captain. Something. You can't just get, not now, Landry, not now. You said you can't just come and take my shit over. What's going on?
Armed robber, multiple hostages, and negotiator can't make contact.
Why aren't we going in?
Pretty sure our scene just became theirs.
You wasn't down here 10 minutes ago. What is this? What do we do? It's just wrong. I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
What's all that?
We're gonna ask you to stand down. We're here in support now only. Frank, this is some bullshit, man.
Welcome everyone to the Twice Over Movies podcast. This is your host Faraz. Today I am here with Fahad.
Hey Faraz, we're reviewing your favorite movie of the year, right?
Ooh, I don't know about that. And I'm also here with Farhan.
What's good? Good morning.
As well as Yusuf.
What it do, baby? We got a full crew today. What's going on? I had to pull up the energy level. You guys were a little bit low, so I thought I'd,
You took the extra time to get here, so you took all the extra energy.
Well, I was
extra
say,
time you got, dude.
To get extra energy, you copied Kawhi Leonard.
Which, not the best role model for energy, but you know what? Oh, it's working. It's working. Yes, Farhan, I had extra time this morning since I was late to, to build up and hype myself up, I think it was worth it. I think it was a good trade-off. So,
I'll be the judge of that.
No regrets.
All right. So yes, this is the first time we have all four of us together. And unfortunately, it's for this movie, which is Project Power, which just
more like Project Sour.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah. So it just came out on Friday. It's a Netflix film starring Jamie Foxx. Starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Dominique Fishback, directed by Henry Jost and Ariel Schulman. Yeah, so I'm kind of upset that this is the first movie all four of us are doing together. And I'm kind of upset this is like the first real-time movie that we're doing. But I didn't realize it would be as bad as it was. Anything else you got?
I knew.
Because the casting's very promising, right? We've got
It's not... Casting's not promising, but it's like... good enough.
I knew right away, and I don't know why.
What do you mean right
Sometimes
away? Do you mean before you started even watching? Okay.
Before, when you announced that we were going to do this movie, for some reason I just had a sense. I was like, oh, it's probably going to suck. I just get a sense for these things sometimes. And even during the week, I was talking to people. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be watching this movie called Project Power. Nobody even really knew of it that I know about. And then when I started looking into it, and I was like, oh, I saw a preview for it or something, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're doing this. So what did I say a minute and 14 seconds into the movie? I texted all of you guys, and I'm like, is this what we're doing?
Yeah, well, what happened a minute and 14 in that you were like, this is not for me?
Oh, enough cringe stuff for a lifetime.
Really?
Yes. It's they hit you strong and early cringe-wise.
A minute and 14 is like not even enough time to get through like just like the intro credits and all of that. So like you pretty much had like 15 seconds. You had like 15 seconds of movie to pick up your mind.
No, you're totally right. It was when the guy was like, there's those five like dudes, and he's like,
oh, he's giving it a sales spiel.
Pill. This is power, and I was like, dude, what am I watching? Freaking a video game from 1957. This is so cringy.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I agree totally with Farhan. I thought the beginning was horrendous. At 15 minutes, I paused it, and I was just like, why are we doing this? I can't believe we're watching this. And I think that's when I texted you guys, too, and I was just like, this is going to suck. That's around the 15-minute mark.
But it's all good.
Anyone want to say anything else, or should we just start getting into our scores?
Who has anything positive to say?
So just in terms of like expectations going into the movie, how do you guys feel about Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt? Because that was probably the stronger suit in terms of my expectations, just because, okay, we got two people who have acting experience, and I am particularly somewhat of a fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, so that's all I really had to go on. And I'll be honest, I hadn't even seen a trailer before watching this movie. But did you guys have any like expectations beyond just the fact that it's a Netflix movie?
Yeah, because Jamie Foxx is in it, I expected like a really decent movie, action movie, right? Every performance of his, he's like oozing in charisma and stuff. Joseph Levitt, how do you say his name? Joseph Levitt Gordon. I don't think I've seen a
Gordon
bad
Levitt, but yeah.
movie with him. Like he was a indie darling for a while, and then he came in Christopher Nolan movies, right? And yeah, I've never seen a bad movie with him. So the casting looked great. I don't have this negative attitude towards Netflix movies. I know Netflix has made plenty of bad movies recently, but
Jamie, Fox Jamie, I think his name is. He's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. You know what I mean? But that was, I think that was literally the only reason that any of us watched that movie. I'm not a huge fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt personally, but Jamie Foxx is a talented actor, and this is so beneath him. And I have no freaking clue why he did this movie. I don't know who the directors are. I don't know who the writer producers are. I don't know any of that stuff. But I think, just like him, a minute 14 onto the set, he should have been like, yeah, I'm out, dude. This is going to destroy my career.
What? It's not going to destroy it.
It's not going to destroy it, but it's not helping it.
True.
To your point, the names that are, kind of putting this production together, not names that I'm super familiar with. So directed by Henry Jost and Ariel Schulman, and written by Mattson Tomlin. So that's not a trio that I'm really familiar with, and maybe they're newer on the block, right? So sometimes you got to start out with kind of an action flick. Maybe they have better to showcase, and this wasn't it. But this is what we're looking at right now. So I guess let's talk more in detail about what we thought about the different aspects of this one, at least.
All right, so we're gonna get going with our scores. We'll talk about the narrative first. I got 60 for narrative.
I got 70 for narrative.
30.
Wow.
I'm at a 50.
Okay, so Farhan hated it.
Yeah.
Yusuf and I probably were very close, and I think Fahad, you actually gave it an average score. What was
I gave an average
about
score. So I saw two main narrative strings running through this movie. One was the coming of age story involving Robin, which early on was promising. She's a great actress. That whole narrative thread reminded me of another movie that I liked, Attack the Block. It's a British movie involving it was just the weird mismatch of genres, and I thought this movie was going in that direction. So the coming of age story was decent, although not fulfilling because it didn't execute later in the movie. The action stuff was just like a typical action movie, and I thought it was a little below average. That's why I gave it the score that I did.
So hey, Farhan, why don't you talk about how much you hated it, the narrative?
Like I said, just cringe all over the place. This is such a, sometimes we throw out the word cliche, and sometimes it's things are cliche because they're good, and then sometimes they're cliche because they're lazy. And this is just straight up freaking lazy. This is the worst superhero movie I've ever seen, and probably that's ever been made. And you know what I thought of? The first Fast and Furious. So I watched that recently. This is cringier than that. This is cringier than the worst scenes in the first Fast and the Furious.
That's a low blow.
So I would push back on that because it's not a superhero movie. It's more like
Isn't it though?
It's the powers induced by technology, right? It's like Limitless or any of the other similar movies that were made.
That's the thing that I thought of the most when I was going into the movie. But I think to Farhan's point, Limitless is about one specific ability, and that's again induced by technology, sure. But this reminds me more of X-Men because it's
right.
You take the pill and everyone's got some sort of other ability, and there's no real explanation of how that comes about. So there is kind of that that superhero or that fictional aspect to it that's way out in the comic book world. I think that is there, just because we have kind of a scientific explanation for it, that doesn't really take it out of that realm for me. I think we can all define superhero kind of differently, but I think we agree on what the concept is, right?
Gotcha.
And that's kind of why I called it a superhero movie. And I think it's just lazy. It's just lazy. They didn't put thought into any of the mechanics of this pill. It just enhances the animal. That doesn't make any sense at all. What is this? This is Jackie Chan Adventures? What are you talking about? It makes no sense. This is a cartoon. It's the story of a freaking cartoon from when I was a kid.
Jackie Chan Adventures. That's a deep cut. Love it.
Throw them all over the place.
Farhan, let me ask you a question. Does it need to make
Yeah.
sense for it to be entertaining from an action perspective?
For this kind of a movie nowadays,
Yeah.
yes,
It does?
it's lazy not to.
All
Because
right.
nowadays, any movie that's like this, like, even people want to know when you think about the origin stories of, they have a reason for why people are the way they are, why they have the powers that they are, because it's so unnatural. And nowadays, people want to know that there's something to back it up. Spider-Man's got his powers from a spider. Batman's just rich, but he's got motivation. There's a motivation behind everything that he does. You know what I mean? Even if you watch like Watchmen, same thing. This is just stupid. It's just drug addicts, and but then they can also get these stupid powers that aren't even that great. Like,
the creators of that pill have the motivation of control and power, right?
right, I get that, but it's just lazy.
I agree with Farhan that I think his explanation is best, where there's a lot of cliche stuff in this movie, but it's not because it's good, it's because it's lazy. Not a lot of work went in. I don't want to hate too much on the directors or the producer or the writer, but probably most of the blame goes to the producers. It felt like a story that was derived from like from like an algorithm, like a bunch of focus groups, and then they were like, let's just do everything.
Yeah, that is a great way to say it, dude. 100%. Instead
of focusing their story or their efforts on like a specific aspect of a movie or a narrative, anything, a direction, they didn't. They just went all over the place. Kind of action, kind of had that coming of age stuff, kind of had some sci-fi or supernatural stuff. I don't know. It was just all over the place, and it was like that because they were lazy, I think, not because it worked, because it didn't.
You know what it seems like? It seems like a movie that like an AI machine would come up with.
Exactly, yeah.
If you wanted an AI machine to come up with a movie that was based on an algorithm of other movies that did really well box office wise.
Yep.
That's what this seems like. I wonder if that's the case.
Have you guys seen those tweets where it's like, I had a bot watch like every single superhero movie ever and then make a superhero script, and it's like just like a bunch of nonsense, like with like, concepts that you are very familiar with, like all in a jumbled random order. It does feel a little bit like that, I guess.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to something you said, that you were like, there's not enough here because the standard of superhero films has been elevated. I didn't expect to hear that from you, but it's a very good point that even if you're not a fan of superhero movies, you can certainly say that, what Marvel has done and what, DC as well, contributing to that, and everyone else, they have raised the standard and made a more holistic perspective on what should be showcased in a superhero film. And so you can't get away with just kind of throwing in random ideas without giving any basis to them anymore, right? Mm-hmm. This movie would have done very well in a previous era, I think. And it still might, because to be frank, part of why I went 50 on narrative is because like the basic structure of the movie isn't horrible. I think the execution is pretty bad, but like, the plot it moves quickly enough that it's entertaining to watch kind of in a more lazy fashion. I don't want to say this is like a really introspective movie that you sit down and like pay full attention to, but if you kind of have this on, it's vaguely entertaining, and that is kind of what a lot of people are looking for in some sense or shape, right? So, I think it has that there, but you're right. It doesn't execute on all the finer nuts and bolts that we've gotten used to in these movies.
Well, Yusuf, you just mentioned the script, like those Twitter bots. Let's talk about the writing in this movie. I gave it a 55.
I gave it a 60.
30.
I'm at a 30 as well. I think I faulted the script more than I did the plot or the direction. Although I think there's definitely fault to be placed in both areas. I think the writing kind of pulled things down. I think the writing pulled down a lot of other categories for me, actually, when I think about it. So
I
Yeah.
agree.
So I think we can all agree that it was pretty cringy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see a lot of value in a lot of the dialogue. It just seemed like did you like I don't want to I don't want to get into this, but there's a lot of rap sequences in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and I don't know like what they're there for. So it was just there's a lot of like weird stuff where I could feel that Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jamie Foxx and the other actors in this movie were being kind of fed dialogue that didn't feel right, and they just kind of had to roll with it. So, I mean, it made their acting look bad, but I could kind of, in my eye, I guess, that fell more on the script that they were being fed than it did kind of their own inherent acting abilities. So, I kept looking at the writing, and I was just like, why do they have this dialogue, like, sequenced in here? Just, it doesn't fit, or it's, they're giving us too much information, or something like that. Where it didn't feel natural, and that adds to the cringe for sure.
They tried. I think they just tried way too hard. They focused their efforts on the wrong stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. The rapping sequences, that girl's got flow, but and I mean there are some parts where there was some funny dialogue throughout the movie, here and there, and even with that, and even with the flow being sick, nothing was purposeful, and nothing was logical at all. So even it being funny at times, that's how bad the whole writing is overall, that I still gave it a 30.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, there was parts that I enjoyed, but like when I looked back a little bit, I was like, it doesn't make sense. Even if I thought that was funny, or even if I thought this was an interesting line, none of it was really cohesive. So I mean, it was difficult to kind of put the pieces together, and that's kind of where my mind always goes, where I'm trying to connect lines back to one another, and I just didn't see that here.
I will add one thing to this. Again, there's a lot of fluff in the writing. I think the only thing it succeeds at is progressing the story. Otherwise, yeah, it's just all over the place. Again, it's not defined well. There's no depth to the writing. It's straight up. It's like just surface level. That's all it is. All right. So yeah, writing, we're all pretty much on the same page here. It's not good. It's either horrible or bad. So it's one or the other. It's not even close to average. Let's go on to the acting score. For acting, I give it a 70.
I gave it a 75.
20.
55.
All right, Fahad, I think you and I are probably on the same page. We kind of like Jamie Foxx a lot, and
Right.
he did what he was asked to do, and he did it pretty well. I thought the actress playing Robin, Dominique, what was her name?
Yeah,
Dominique Fishback. I thought she was pretty
Fishback,
good.
yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, though, he felt out of place, awkward, and weird to me. Supporting actors kind of were bad, so I just went with an average score. Fahad, would you add anything to that?
I completely agree with everything you said. Joseph Levitt Gordon. I hope I pronounced his name right. No, I butchered it. Joseph Levitt Gordon. He was completely
It's the other way, Fahad.
What is it?
It's Gordon Levitt.
Gordon Levitt. All right, whatever.
I think you're gonna keep now that it's like it's in your head. I don't think you're ever gonna get it right.
Nope,
Keep
never.
going
I
back
don't
and
think so.
All right. Yeah, he was completely miscast in this movie. And there was a lot of speeches by him which were extremely cringy. And yeah, I think Yusuf was spot on when he said these actors were given lines to say and they didn't have any input, and that's why it just came off very forced and fake.
I wonder how long it took them to make this movie. I wonder if this was a quick project. Honestly, this seems like a movie that was made during quarantine. They had no time.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Maybe, man.
I did feel kind of like they looked at like The Dark Knight Rises, and they're like, hey, he plays a cop in that, and he's kind of angry. Could we just do that? Like, and so that's kind of his role here, more or less.
Yeah, I don't know. I gave it a 20. Honestly, that's probably harsh. Yeah, I'm just realizing it is probably harsh. There's I'm not even gonna say good moments, but there's average moments from Jamie Foxx and others. So maybe not a 20. And maybe I'm at a 30, 35 or something. But
Give me the number, man. I gotta input it.
Oh my god. Okay, freaking 35. Yeah, I mean it's the same thing, man. acting is just so it's cringy. It's not believable at all. It's completely illogical, and the people who are bad in this movie are so bad. They're so bad that if you took them out, this movie would have been probably 40 points higher in my categories. But those people are what I have in my memory. I have that villain
Yeah,
in my freaking mind right now, and he is so bad.
Which one?
the vaguely Hispanic one, Biggie.
The vaguely Hispanic European one.
Yeah.
Oh right, so that's Rodrigo Santoro,
Yeah.
who plays Biggie, which was very confusing in this movie as to who Biggie was. But anyway,
yeah, very
yeah.
true.
So yeah, he's around a lot actually. So I mean, I think you're right. He does have kind of a big impact because he's mostly. I think there's a lot of villains in this movie actually, and they don't really define that well, and flesh that out. But he's probably the figurehead that we see the most.
We like the main actor, Jamie Foxx, kind of, and Dominique Fishback, she was pretty good. Otherwise, it's pretty much bad throughout the board, right? I mean, no one...
Oh,
no
yeah.
one,
I mean, no one else stood out.
No one's talking about Machine Gun Kelly playing Newt, man.
Oh, no one's talking about Casey Neistat.
Dude,
I don't know
yeah,
who
and then the
people are.
vlogging guy.
Yeah.
Right? That's who it is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I was so surprised to see him.
Who's that? Tell me more about that.
He was the boyfriend of the girl that has like that
Ice
Mr.
powers.
Freeze. Yeah, the Mr. Freeze power.
Sure.
He's
Who was
like
that?
he's like a vlogger on YouTube.
He used to be.
What's
or he
his name?
used to be.
Casey Neistat.
What are they doing in this movie, man? What? So they went to YouTube and they're like, "Hey, this vlogger is like pretty successful. Should we just pull him into like so?" And then I didn't know that was Machine Gun Kelly, but I mean, okay, fine. It's not a big deal. I think that was more of a minor role, and it's okay.
Dude,
but
that was probably one of the most cringy moments of the movie in the beginning when and they're like, "Oh, you asked a lot of questions. I'm Newt."
right,
Oh
and
my God.
I think that was his entire function, to mention his name, and as long as he did that, like his contribution to the overall plot was complete. So I mean, fine, whatever. But like, I that moment did stick out to me. I will say. I think I went with a kind of a medium bad score because there were some funny moments, like Farhan was saying. It's just they're all in isolation. So again, I was looking more at the writing as the real perpetrator here, but. I think we all agree it's kind of bad. I think they could have done a lot better. It's just they had kind of the puzzle pieces is what I keep going back to.
All right, so let's move on to the themes. I give the themes a 40.
I gave it a 50.
I gave it a 50 as well.
All right, so I gave it a 15. a 1.5. I just want to be clear on that.
Is it because you couldn't identify a theme?
Yes, that is exactly why.
I had a lot of trouble with that as well.
I mean, I can make up some like rough themes, but again, I'd be cherry picking specific moments or specific scenes to build that theme rather than looking cohesively. So that's not a theme to me. That's just an individual moment. So I didn't know where to go with this. The one, I mean, obviously, fake spoiler alert, this movie's going to talk about how power can be a bad thing, right, guys? Like, so obviously they're going to go there, and they did. But yeah, I didn't see much of a real theme to this movie at all. And frankly, for an action movie, again, that's okay if that's their goal, but I'm just not going to give them points for that.
Yeah, I mean the theme. I can find a couple of themes, but I mean you're right. They're not well defined. The movie doesn't do it just doesn't do a good job of executing any of the themes. I would say there's like maybe two, but
like you said, Yusuf, they're like one off. It's like mentioned in passing, so the point gets across, but it's not really part of the the underlying purpose of the movie in any way. So
Right.
it just doesn't work.
And I mean,
you want to say something?
we can talk about what the definition of a theme is, but and maybe we disagree a little bit on that, but that is really towing the line to me where I'm not sure that I consider that a theme. So it's, how much do you have to do in a movie? How repetitive or how recurring does something have to be to actually make a theme? I don't know where the line is for everyone, but it wasn't there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw some themes with the coming of age story that they had early on in the movie, but since they dropped it, it was kind of disappointing. One theme I will mention is the one of how black kids are forced to grow up fast, right? And I think the movie mentioned it, how Jamie Foxx's character sees Robin as a adult, right? He's like, you've been dealing in the streets. You're not a kid. You're an adult. Grow up, and kind of stuff like that. I think there's a larger conversation being had in America of how black kids are viewed as adults more so than their peers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I saw it necessarily as as racially charged as that. I mean, the movie is overall the movie definitely is, but I think it was more just I don't even see coming of age necessarily. I just see her. So one of the main themes being like, you don't underestimate people or something like that. You know what I mean? And so I think she had everything inside her the whole time. It's just nobody saw that power within her.
In terms of kind of the racially motivated stuff and how different groups are looked at or treated, I do want to talk more about that definitely after the jump, because I think that is something that probably I discounted when I was watching this movie. I didn't really pay as much attention to it, and I can think of a few callbacks to that. So that is interesting. I do want to get into that.
All right, so let's finish off our scores. Let's talk about the aesthetics. I gave this a 50.
I gave it a 60.
60.
Damn it. I gave it a 75.
Do you regret being the highest score?
I very much regret being the highest score, because now you're going to ask me why I gave it a 75.
So what I really liked about the aesthetics in some portions of the movie were the action sequences where it was highly stylized, and there was like, even though some of you might like disagree with like the music, right? But I liked the music because it amped up the action sequences. There was plenty of color and interesting camera choices going on, but that was a minority of the scene, so I still give it a low score.
Yeah, you've all seen that scene from X-Men with the silver guy. What's his name?
Quicksilver.
You all know that scene.
Yeah,
and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do as well.
The slow motion one, right?
Yeah, I think that they not necessarily even just like slow motion, just in terms of like the scene where they're one of the like most ambitious action scene. I feel like they just try to piggyback off of something like that, And so it was interesting, but it's nothing that we had never seen before, and it wasn't even executed. 5 seconds of it was executed well. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think overall there was good action moments in this movie. I mean, I gave it pretty much an average score, so I'm not really saying anything outstanding about it. I do agree there was some interesting camera work. They did choose kind of a very stylized way to go with this movie, and you can disagree or agree with it, but I think they chose it and they stuck to their guns on it, so there was at least continuity there. And it fits for this type of movie overall. I think not outstanding, but it didn't bother me like horribly either. So just not much to say there for me.
So I didn't appreciate the heavily overuse of dramatization with the visuals, the music being heavy-handed in use. I thought it was very distracting. I wouldn't even say that it fit the movie all the time. It did at certain moments in certain scenes, but since it was so overused, it was out of place in other scenes and other moments. And then otherwise, I did like one shot in the movie. It basically goes from day to night. I don't want to say anything beyond that because it might be a spoiler. For narrative, Farhan hated it the most. For writing, Farhan and Yusuf hated it equally bad. For acting, Farhan hated it the most. For themes, Yusuf hated it the most. And then for aesthetics, I hated it the most. So Fahad was the most even-keeled.
I think overall I liked the movie the most, I think, right? Because my average score was the highest. Yeah.
So we pretty much, I don't want to say unanimously, but majority decision is that this movie is terrible.
Or no, the majority decision is it's below average, right?
No, it's not below average. Would be at least a 60.
Yeah.
It's below that. It's bad.
Okay.
Dude, we got scores in the 20s, man. All over the place, too. Like,
I think
you know what I mean?
I think the themes for 15, that's my lowest score that I've given a movie to this point ever.
I don't think any movie is going to get as low of a score in any category.
You know what's weird, though?
And I'm actually really proud of you, man.
It took a lot of courage. I was brave, right?
Yeah.
I had to speak out. So, like, what's weird though is, I wasn't, clawing at my eyes this entire movie or anything. I just think you need to go in with low expectations and just, expect just some mild entertainment. You know what I mean? So I always try to say that movies like that do have a function, but just know this isn't like a work of art or something. You know what I mean?
No, it's you play it in the background and you do something else. You do your laundry.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. I'm not like all of our avid listeners. We're not saying don't watch this movie. Please do, and also listen to the discussion afterwards. But you know what I mean? Like it's you have to have the right mindset going into this movie, and then it has some value. Limited may that be, but it's there's something there. I don't know. I guess Netflix has moved on to like really trying to be kind of a powerhouse and compete for awards and everything, and this doesn't fit into that anymore. So this seems like a drop off from that standpoint.
I mean, in addition to all those award-winning movies, they need filler, and this is filler.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've gotten to a point where the amount of content they're putting out is inevitably going to lead to content like this. Again, they have a bunch of writers somewhere who are like, hey, like just Google some quick stuff and let's see what we come up.
Yeah.
That sounds absurd, but I'm sure that's going on because when you have to pump out a certain number of scripts in a limited amount of time, you have to go searching for ideas, and you go with some simplistic stuff. So maybe that's where this came from. Again, it's just it's not going to have the value that a lot of the stuff that we really enjoy has. But I've watched stuff like this and not complained. So
yeah. So I think one of the major problems in this movie, it's the tone. I think if they could have kept it lighthearted, if Joseph Levitt-Gordon's character could have been more. If he could have played better off of Jamie Foxx, then it could have been like almost a buddy cop movie, which would have introduced some comedy. It would have been much better off, right? A lighthearted, stupid movie would have succeeded better.
You know what, though? That sounds a lot like Bright to me, which is another Netflix failure that kind of went in the same direction, Power's involved, kind of two cops that don't get along but have to figure it out. And then it kind of took like a dark tone. I mean, that movie's a mess, but and Netflix will not admit it. But, this one, like, if you go more buddy cop, you end up kind of there. So they're like on a spectrum, and they've done a lot of the movies along the spectrum.
Oh,
And
I see.
this is where they landed almost. I don't know. I'm not sure there's a quick fix to this movie to make it great, but yeah, there's some amendments you could do to make this movie bearable. And Faraz said it earlier too. Yeah, like the music they were using made you take it more seriously because they played that kind of like blaring ominous music
yeah.
over, and they did it not only over the action scenes, but they did it over some of like the normal dialogue scenes where it's like they're kind of telling you like, hey, take this seriously, like this is like this is a tense moment, and then that kind of ruined the effect that it would have had on the actual tense action scenes and things like that. It didn't have the same effect because they were using it too often. There's a lot of that going on where they're messing with your mindset, and that affects how you view a lot of this.
I will finish off this part by saying that if you can get past the first 15 minutes, it does get better. It starts like horrendous, and then it gets to just like bad.
Voluntarily. If you get past it voluntarily, like you're in it, you deserve a freaking award. And if you don't have to watch this movie, and you get past 5 minutes of this first 5 minutes, you're just you're patient.
I didn't mention this for aesthetics, but the CGI was pretty weak too, man. I thought the CGI was like bad.
Oh yeah, it was, dude. It was done on freaking Microsoft Word. That's what the CGI was done on.
So basically, just clip art.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was word art, dude.
Okay, everyone. This concludes our preview of Project Power. We will release our discussion that includes spoilers next Thursday. Do go watch this movie. Hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast. And remember to support us on Patreon or by sharing the podcast with a friend. Feel free to contact us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at The Twice Over, or email us at comments@thetwiceover.com. All of the music you heard is from Amerigo Gasway. Check him out on Bandcamp and Spotify.